Hi guys. Okay, so this one's hopefully going to be kind of quick, but I do want to explain it because I feel like the regression therapy videos that I did goes into this a little bit more in depth. So if this is interesting, go watch those. But and I will link them somewhere wherever you're watching it. But I want to talk specifically about what happens to trauma that is unhealed. So we know that when trauma is unhealed mentally or chemically in the brain, what happens, like there's a lot of science to back it up. We know what happens emotionally, but do we know what happens energetically? What happens to our energy system when we experience trauma, and where does the trauma go if it is not cared for? So I want to go into that today. So trauma is, if you're here, say hi, by the way. If you're here, say hi. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay, as always. So trauma is really an intense thing, but it also can be not super intense at all. In my opinion, I've already made a video about this as well, just to brief sum up again. Trauma is defined as anything that stops you in your path or stops the functioning of life and you can't move forward anymore because of an event that happened. So, I mean, for a 2-year-old mom telling a little kid they can't have a sucker, that's traumatic in my head because they don't have the emotional, mental, and spiritual and intellectual capacity to understand why mom is saying no. And so they have to make up a story like, mom doesn't love me, and I'm not worthy and deserving, and all of these different things, okay? So in my head, what is defined as trauma is anything that you personally feel is traumatic. Any experience or life circumstance that you're not able to fully process because you didn't quite understand what was happening at the time. Okay, and all trauma is valid, and you get to decide what is trauma and what is not trauma, okay? So don't let anybody else define it for you. You don't have to get in a massive car accident or experience a world war in order to experience trauma, okay? So trauma to me is defined as something that you can't move forward from because of an event that happened in the past, okay? What happens on an energetic level when we experience trauma? Well, I love talking about it. Okay, so what happens is our brain sends signals like, oh, we're misfiring. And like, if you were to look on the neurons in your brain and stuff, your brain most of the time fires like this. Like when it's functioning properly, it connects like this, okay? When you're experiencing trauma, it starts to misfire, and these signals start to feel disrupted, and they can start to just like this. If you're visual, this helps me. So they don't quite hit where they're supposed to, okay? The signal in your brain is just thrown and they start to misfire, okay? So that's what's physically happening. Energetically, while this is happening, our brain and our body and our whole response system, our whole energy is going, oh, we're experiencing trauma, and it hits record, okay? So it starts to make a record of all of the negative emotions and all of the negative feelings and all of the belief systems that you're creating in this moment about trauma, okay? Sorry, I'm gonna go grab my kid. This is Facebook Live for you. So, when this is happening, you are experiencing this moment of disconnect. What's up, baby? Oh, that's why she came and got me. Her dolly's foot or shoe came off, so we have to put her shoe back on. Yeah. So when we're experiencing this state of mind where the trauma is not fully processing, our energy system has hit record, okay? And while it's recording, it's absorbing everything that's happening, and it's making a record of the belief systems and the emotions and the energy that you were in at that moment, okay? Unhealed trauma, what happens to unhealed trauma is it takes that record and it stores it in your aura, your chakras, and your meridian points. Whatever like flow, whatever your key, whatever energy was misfiring at the time, it makes a record and it changes your energy. It changes the chakra. It changes, obviously depending on the intensity of a trauma, but it will change a chakra and how a chakra moves and functions. It will change, and it will store a negative emotion in your meridian point. It will take the whole event and stick it in your aura, okay? So naturally what's going to happen is we're going to create a bubble of trauma. We're going to create an energy of trauma. It's literally going to modify. And as you grow up and as life goes on, take that 2-year-old for example, the 2-year-old is going to experience something like the 16-year-old, like we said in the age regression session, 16-year-old and mom and sleepover, and I want to sleep over, and mom says no, and she goes, you don't love me. And the same trauma is going to come up, replay, and because it's in your system and it's familiar to you. And so you're going to create a situation again and replay it in your current life. Because just like our body, when we scrape our elbow, just like our body sends a signal to our elbow and is like, oh, we need to repair. We need to repair. Everybody send a signal. It's time to regenerate, okay? It's time to heal this. Your energy has that signal as well. And so your energy will send out a signal, oh, we're traumatized. It's time to repair. It's time to repair it. And it will literally create and pull in the experiences because you're sending a broadcast, I'm traumatized. And so what's gonna happen is you're gonna go, this situation kind of feels familiar. I already know how I need to play this out, so it's gonna play it out, okay? So take that 2-year-old, they're gonna go up to mom, and mom has no problem with a sleepover, but for some reason today she just doesn't feel like saying yes. And it's probably because this teenager, the 16-year-old, has broadcast a signal that I know how this goes. Make sure at the end of the night, I feel like you don't love me. I feel unworthy. I don't feel deserving, etc. Whatever this broadcast is. And her energy, mom's energy, is going to receive it. And it's going to go, okay, I'll be obedient to your trauma. And so it becomes a cycle. This is why abusive relationships, like we get out of an abusive relationship and then we get back into another one. It's because our brain and our energy and our body goes towards what's familiar. And so we keep replaying unpleasant patterns. And it can be different. It can be different life circumstances. Maybe it's not a sucker. Maybe it's not a sucker in a store with mom, but it's a sleepover with mom and we're 16. So it's the same kind of circumstances. It's just unhealed. Okay? So our energy, what it does with trauma is it stores it and then it triggers it up again and it makes you replay it over and over and over. And it's a repetition of your past until you have the intellectual, emotional, and energetic capacity to handle what you're being dealt with. That's why, even in circumstances where you're like, that should have never happened, like, I don't understand how this happened twice. Like, this was so weirdly out of my control, like with my miscarriage the first time around, and then it happened again. Obviously, I had some stuff I needed to work on. I needed to go through it one more time. I needed to process it. I needed to comprehend on a deeper emotional, mental, intellectual level. And the problem is that most of the time with trauma, especially when very triggering things happen, like a miscarriage, you just sit in bed. And the last thing you want to do is understand, comprehend, and experience it and go deep into it. Also, one other thing, by the time we are older, and we're trying to understand things, we are replaying trauma a lot. And most of the trauma, most of the subconscious that we're recording this is very very technical, but our critical faculty in our brain, the thing that is open and receptive to trauma, that's not developed until you're about 7 or 8 years old, give or take. And so until then, it's most of your life is going to be replaying in the 20s. Most of your life is going to be replaying in one or conception even until 7. So more facts and a kind of a bit of a tangent, but okay, so I'm going to read these comments. Excellent point about trauma. This one is the following reasons I think postpartum follow-up as a doula to address someone's unfelt trauma during pregnancy or birth is vital. Yes, I believe postpartum depression is it is trauma. It is trauma-based. I believe that. So the law of attraction applies to traumatic energy. Yes, we are magnetic, okay? We pull in energy that resonates with us. We pull in energy that is familiar to us. That's a good word. And so that's why we surround ourselves with people that are alike to us. So we're pulling in people, circumstances, and situations that align with our energy. And if our energy is traumatized, we're going to create a situation like an ex-boyfriend with a new boyfriend in order to comprehend, understand. This all happens in your crown chakra, by the way. Your crown chakra is literally, its sole purpose is one, to connect to God. But the reasoning why we're connecting to God is that we can understand and comprehend this life and overcome our difficulties. Pain is not meant to bring us down. Trauma is not meant to bring us down. It is built so that we can overcome them, step on top of the difficulty and say, I was there, I'm not anymore, I understand more now. Okay? Understanding to me is like the core of why I'm here. It's so powerful. That's why I write my spirit personality books, is because it's like, geez, everything is understanding. If we could understand and comprehend, we could avoid so much trauma and pain. Most of the pain that we have about ourselves and what other people said to us is just a misrepresentation about who we are. So anyway, that's another random tangent. But that is what happens to your energy when you are traumatized. I'm trying not to make this too long. I'm trying to talk really fast. But that's what happens to your energy when you're traumatized. So if you have not fully understand, comprehend, and healed it on an intellectual, spiritual, and energetic level, you are still going to be experiencing trauma. So I hope that helps. I hope this was enlightening. It was a fun video for me to make. I love talking about it. Oh, one other tip. If you are suffering from traumatic events repeating over and over and over, regression therapy. That's the key. All right. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day.